Hi, and welcome to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation today. Want to start, as we typically do, with values issues. We believe in the sanctity of life and the sanctity of marriage and family, and so those are going to kind of rise to the top of the stack every day here on this program, because these are the issues we believe are foundational to recapturing the foundational values of America. These were the values that were shared by the Founding Fathers: the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to property, the right to the pursuit of happiness, and marriage as a union of one man and one woman. Unthinkable to the Founding Fathers. A same-sex marriage would be absolutely unthinkable to them. They would think, what kind of insanity, what kind of immorality are you tolerating in the country that we left for you? They would be absolutely aghast. Every state in the Union at the time of the founding made homosexual conduct a felony. It was a crime. Thomas Jefferson, icon of the left, he actually wrote a law for the state of Virginia that required castration as punishment for the sin of engaging in homosexual behavior. It'd be unthinkable to the Founding Fathers that we would have same-sex marriage in our day. They could not imagine it. That's not the country they created, not the values on which this country was founded, not the country that they left for us. In fact, George Washington, we've talked about this before, and I'll mention it again, that George Washington literally drummed two homosexuals out of the Continental Army. He was our first commander-in-chief, our first president, first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen, the number one founding father, the most important man in American history. Man, you can say what you want about Abraham Lincoln, but the most important man in American history, George Washington, hands down. There would be no United States of America without George Washington. And he caught two soldiers in flagrante. He gathered the entire army the next day, had the drummers lined up, the whole army lined up in two rows, and he marched these guys through that chute with soldiers on either side, and he had the drummers playing, he literally drummed these guys out of the United States military, the Continental Army. So there is absolutely no possible way that the Founding Fathers would have thought that homosexual marriage was something that even could possibly occur in the United States of America, in the nation that they had created. We've talked before about the danger to religious liberty that is created by the homosexual agenda. Now, I want to talk a bit about the sanctity of life before we get started here. And Rob, maybe we can have clip number one there, the Andrea Mitchell clip, ready to go. You know, it's interesting. You've got this brouhaha in the state of Texas. It passed the House yesterday. This is a great pro-life bill in the state of Texas. It would prohibit abortions on babies after the 20th week of gestation. We know that they are able to feel pain at that point. And the thought that anybody would defend abortion, would defend the dismembering, and that's how they do it at that age. They dismember the baby in the mother's womb. That anybody would defend the dismembering of a baby who is able to feel pain is demonic. It is savage. It is brutality of a kind that would have astonished the Founding Fathers, that we would ever in this nation allow this kind of savagery. It is Hitlerian. This is like Joseph Goebbels, only it is worse than what Goebbels is doing, because everybody in America knows this is going on, and we have justices in the Supreme Court that protect this barbarity. We have lawmakers that work to protect this kind of barbarity. This would be unthinkable, and it ought to be unthinkable in any kind of a just world. But the bill passed yesterday. The House of Representatives is now going to the Senate. We had Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst. He's in charge of the Senate, the president of the Senate. Lieutenant governors often are in state legislatures. And this bill in the state of Texas, it would prohibit abortions on a baby after 20 weeks of development. It would require that abortion clinics meet the same kind of standards that ambulatory surgical centers have to meet. Now, in other words, this is a surgical procedure at this stage of pregnancy, and there are requirements. If you're going to have a walk-in surgical clinic where you can do outpatient surgery, where they walk in, you do the surgery, they walk out, you have to meet certain standards. And abortion clinics in Texas do not have to meet those standards. It's absolutely unfair, and it's a disservice to women. So this bill would require, hey, if you're going to do this kind of invasive surgical procedure, you have to meet the same standards that every other surgical clinic has to meet. And it would require that doctors have admitting privileges in local hospitals. This is absolutely common sense, and it's in the best interest of the health of women. Because if they get in trouble in an abortion and they start to bleed, their cervix is injured or ruptured, they have other kind of complications, they're going to need emergency treatment. An ambulatory surgical center is not going to be able to provide it. Got a story today, another woman carted off in an ambulance from one of George Carhart's or Leroy Carhart's abortion clinics, late-term abortionist, and this woman had to be carted off in an ambulance to the hospital. Now, he doesn't have admitting privileges anywhere because hospitals, the medical profession, they look at abortionists as absolute bottom feeders. They are scavengers. They are like the vultures. They are the bottom feeders of the medical industry. They have zero respect, none whatsoever, because remember, the medical profession exists to save life. That's the first thing you say in the Hippocratic Oath. First of all, do no harm. Well, abortion's all about harming. It's all about killing an innocent baby, a vulnerable little baby who ought to be in the safest place in the world, the womb of his mother. So anyway, the pro-abortion groups, the pro-death groups are out in force in Texas. And it's interesting, this thing is kind of backfiring on them. And by the way, Rasmussen, I'm looking at a poll here. I tell you, every day we're fighting a winnable war. Here's a story, National Review Online. Rasmussen poll finds 3-year high pro-life sentiment. In other words, pro-life sentiment in America, according to Rasmussen, is higher than it has been in 3 years, and it's up 7 points since January of 2013. In just 6 months, there has been a 7% increase in pro-life sentiment, and this has been climbing since the 2012 election. 3 separate surveys, according to Michael New at NRO, 3 separate surveys by Rasmussen, Gallup, and NBC Wall Street Journal show that support for the pro-life position has increased anywhere from 4 to 8 points since January. In 2009, Gallup reported that for the first time, this is 2009, pro-life public sentiment had reached 50%. And listen to this. Overall, 6 of the last 9 Gallup surveys have found that people were more likely to describe themselves as pro-life than pro-choice. I repeat. So when people say, hey, the American people are pro-choice, they're pro-abortion, they're pro-death, not true. 6, this is the Fisher factoid of the day, 6 of the last 9 Gallup polls, 6 of the last 9 have found that people are more likely to describe themselves as pro-life than pro-choice. So be encouraged, ladies and gentlemen. We are winning the battle for the hearts and minds of the American people on the sanctity of life. No reason why we cannot do the same thing on the sanctity of marriage. Tim Huelskamp, Representative Huelskamp, has proposed a marriage amendment, a federal marriage amendment, an amendment to the federal Constitution that would define for the entire United States of America that marriage is exclusively the union of one man and one woman. He's got 30 co-sponsors now in the House of Representatives, and we sent an action alert out this week, and we're urging you. I've already sent a letter to my congressman. I urge you to do the same. Is send a letter to your congressman, member of the House of Representatives, urging him to become a co-sponsor of the federal marriage amendment. Now is the time to push for this. We're becoming increasingly fractured as a nation on the issue of marriage policy, domestic policy, and it's time for us to get behind an effort that will bring us together with one heart and one mind, one consistent policy throughout the United States of America. You know, Abraham Lincoln said back in his day that the United States cannot exist half slave and half free. Now, the same is true when it comes to the issue of homosexuality. With regard to the institution of marriage, the United States cannot exist half gay and half straight. We've got to make a decision. Just like we had to make a decision about slavery, we have got to make a decision about the homosexuality because there is a lot at risk. Now, back to the abortion issue and the state of Texas. The liberals there, they're trying to turn Texas from a red state to a blue state. And this abortion thing, it turns out, has come at a bad time for them. Here's a piece from Breitbart.com written by Tony Lee. Prominent liberals, including the group Battleground Texas, have recently launched efforts to try to turn Texas blue. They lament the fact this is what, the second largest state in the country, or third maybe after California, New York, and it's decidedly red. But these kickoff events, which have coincided with elected officials in Texas trying to pass pro-life legislation, may have come at the most inopportune time. As even Politico is a fringe left-wing website, as even Politico noted, there is just one problem with these efforts. Latinos as a group oppose abortion more strongly than most other voting groups. Now, the Democrats are pinning their hopes on a growing Hispanic population in Texas. I believe already Texas is majority Hispanic. If I'm not misunderstanding that, they will be shortly if they're not. In fact, the entire nation by 2043 there'll be no majority race in America by 2043. I don't know if you knew that, but every one of us by 2043 is going to be a minority. Whites will be a minority in the United States of America by 2043. And there's already a huge number of counties and municipalities that are majority minority as we speak. But the Democrats are counting on getting more Hispanics in Texas than white voters and going to turn that place blue. But the problem, as Politico pointed out, is Latinos as a group oppose abortion more strongly than most other voting groups. This is what Politico said. In their candid moments, Democrats acknowledge that abortion isn't the issue they would have picked to lead the pitch for Latino votes. Politico noted that a Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life survey found that 53% of Hispanic Catholics, and most Hispanics are Catholics, there's a growing evangelical movement in Hispanic circles, but the majority of them are Catholic by tradition and background. 53% of Hispanic Catholics say abortion should be illegal in all or most cases, which is a lower percentage than white evangelical Protestants and Mormons, but higher than all other religious voting groups, including white Catholics, white mainline Protestants, black Protestants, and Jews. And then furthermore, a poll conducted by the Texas State GOP found that 62% of Texas Hispanics who voted in the 2012 election described themselves as pro-life, while just 32% called themselves pro-choice. Now, what does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? It tells you if the Republican Party is concerned about making inroads into the Hispanic community, be unapologetically pro-life. Don't back away from the social issues. Take a stand. Advertise yourself as somebody who defends babies in the womb, and you will find the majority of Hispanics will be with you on that issue. Back in 2, Focal Point AFR Talk.